And then as a standard practice, I will read the agenda. The agenda is slightly different than what I
Rick,
sent
can
out.
you mute yourself, Rick McKenna?
Sorry about that.
No worries, bud. Thank you.
So the agenda is going to be slightly different than what I sent out to you on Thursday. There was a glitch in the city clerk's office, and the version 3 of the agenda didn't get posted in the timely manner. So I'm looking at version 2, which is there was a few additions in version 3. The first item will be public participation. Then we'll start our discussion. The first thing would be the review of the response to the open meeting law. As part of that response, there was an item in there relative to what constitutes a deliberation. So I'd like to go over that item also. Then we'll have a look at the latest drafts with the name change for the eligibility form. Then I would like to talk about the formation of new working groups as we're moving forward, and it's going to be pretty busy. Then I'd like to turn it over to Sarki to talk about some modifications to the ordinance that he is going to be proposing to the city council. Then we'll have another discussion on the in-person meeting as requested by Dave. Then we'll have a report from myself, the chair, and approval of minutes. The minutes that was not posted in time in the version 2, they were in the version 3. So I'm going to postpone those minutes until next time. So going back up to the top, I do want to say that, and to answer your question, Steve, relative to Katie, she informed me tonight that she has given her notice and she's leaving the city. But she said if we wanted her to take the notes, she would review the tape and create the minutes. Otherwise, I think Yvonne is going to do that, as far as I understand. So
Correct.
With that, we'll go up to the top with public participation. Anyone that would like to speak, I would ask that they raise their hand. Please make your comments known relative to anything relative to the CPA. And you can have 3 minutes. Anything relative to CPA in the city of Framingham. So is there any people that would like to speak? Okay, I don't see any. So we'll move on to the next item, which is review of the response to the open meeting law. What I'd like to do is, if you hold on a second. I will get the background material up. And we'll go to the response. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, good. So as we worked on the last, at our last meeting, I worked with the city solicitor to come up with a response, and the response was sent to the Attorney General's office as required by the complaint. And I did send it out to all the committee members, Hopefully you had a chance to read it, so I don't want to really go over everything in it. But with that, with this letter, actually put together a timeline of what happened on June 6th, where for whatever reason, I was using the same account that I had always been using for the last 9 months. And yet, for whatever reason, Zoom kicked us out or dropped us after 40 minutes. So we came back in, and that's the timeline there explains exactly how it happened. Okay. The second item was relative to an allegation of an open meeting law violation relative to an email and the process of the emails. So that's the second item on our deliberation. I suppose we could take it up together, but I just want to state that if you express your opinion, and this is from the guideline by the open meeting law, and I will call up the second item by the Attorney General. They have some guidance as far as informational brochure that they put together, that if you express your opinion to the entire committee, even if the committee does not respond, that could be constituted as a deliberation. And I don't recall ever receiving anything relative to that type of a thing where a member expressed an opinion. So I'm just cautioning everyone that be very, very careful when you're sending emails to the committee as a whole. So just be aware of that. And I'm just cautioning everyone that it could be an open meeting law violation. The third item was about the posted agenda. And the posted agendas in question on the 13th and the 6th, as well as the 27th, when we started back in December or whatever, we slotted our meetings, we posted our meetings, and the city clerk required that we have an agenda. So we put a template together so that we could create, we could hold the spot on our meetings, on the city's meeting portal, that would, so that we would be posted for the rest of the fiscal year. And that's what happened. But in accordance with the open meeting law, you have 48-hour business hours, I'll call them business hours, prior to your official meeting to finalize the agenda. Okay. And that's what we have done. And including this last one here, like I said, the agenda that was posted as of the close of business on Thursday night was version 2, and that's the one we're working off of now. If you take a look at the version that was on the meeting portal, version 3 says that it was posted Friday morning at like 10:39, okay? Where version 2 was actually posted on July 5th. So we complied with that. So that's why we're not talking about anything on the version 3 agenda. So are there any questions relative to the response to the complaint, the open meeting law violation complaint that was listed? Is there anyone that would like to comment on it? Okay, hearing none. Well, I thank you. And like I say, I just want to caution you on on expressing an opinion to the entire committee via email. So just beware. So, okay, let's go on to the next item. The next item, which is item 3, because we just talked about item 2, is the final draft of the eligibility form. Let me call item 3 up. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Not up yet, Tom.
It's not up. Okay. Hold on. How's that?
Not yet. There it is.
There it is. Okay. All right. As requested, or as we discussed last time, was changing the name to project eligibility form. That has some issues with that because it's referenced in other places, whether it's in our CPP or whatever, but we have to cross-reference it and get it updated to make sure that it's consistent. So the other thing is, I want to say, this form is a living document, okay? And I don't know if our members of the members of the committee should be listed on the agenda. I mean, listed on this form. I think it's because just as the form changes, the committee is going to change eventually too. So I think one less thing that we'd have to modify this form for. That's what my thought. I have a couple of hands. Fred, you have a hand.
Yeah, well, I guess I agree with you on that point, but at the very least, my name only needs to be there once.
Okay. Oh, I didn't even notice that, but yeah, you're right. Okay, thank you for that. Steve, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so I would agree with you about listing the names of the committee. I don't think it's necessary or appropriate to include them in a form like this. I don't think it adds information that is relevant to the form. But moving on beyond that, while you change the title within the text, it's called the pre-qualification form many times. So I think we need to do a universal replacement. So we're calling it the same thing throughout the document.
I agree. And then there was a discussion at one point of changing the final form too, whether to be consistent. I do agree that I think we have to do a search and replace. It makes sense.
I also would are you looking for recommendations in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take recommendations.
So given the length of the document, I think you ought to have page numbers next to this, the index.
Oh, you're saying like that?
Yeah,
The sections here should have a page number on it?
yeah.
Okay.
If it's going to have page numbers. That seemed to be something that was really important to everyone at our last meeting.
Okay.
And you want to keep scrolling through it?
Sure. 1 second, I'm just taking notes here. Okay,
All right, so how it's being submitted? At number one,
yeah,
Joe and I had made a suggestion in our revision after talking to Sarkey that any hard copies should go to the planning office
yeah.
rather than just going to City Hall. If that's acceptable to the group. I think it's still acceptable to you, right, Sarkey? Yes. And that's all I have from what I'm seeing so far. Oh, well, it talks about 30 days. I thought we had a conversation that we wanted to turn it around more quickly than that.
I think we have the option, but I think we all know that it'll probably be.
Can you
It's
go
quicker
up
than that.
further? Go back up again? So it's talking about 30 business days, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
six weeks just to confirm eligibility.
Yeah, 30 business days, correct.
That's a long time. I mean, that means that for anything that's submitted at the end of the eligibility submission period, we potentially wouldn't get back to them until after the entire application process closed.
Sure. I think,
So I think we ought to look at the times. I'm not going to suggest an alternative, but this is a pretty long time for just confirming eligibility.
I would agree with you. Anybody else have a comment?
My comment would be that, yes, it's a long time. Doesn't mean that we should take 6 weeks to do it. But we need to set something that doesn't put us in a position where we can't, if there's something that prevents the committee from meeting or for a decision to be made on it, we don't want to be in violation in any way.
Correct. I mean, I think 10 business days seems more reasonable. That's 2 weeks. So that's my thoughts. Steve
And,
Joyce.
Yeah, and go ahead. I'm sorry, Steve.
Yeah, so just, 2 things. One is with that timeline of 2 weeks, it does give you the opportunity to have a meeting without violating the open meeting law. So that depending upon where in the 2 weeks they make their application, they make it in the second part of the second week, then you'd be into 3 weeks. So the timing of everything, I think, with having 30 days, you're definitely going to be able to fall into it, I think, but
Yeah, unless we just take out 30 days, take out business and just say
Yeah.
30 days.
yeah, well, the business days definitely should come out because that's way too long. But to get it into 2 weeks so that you can get it back. But once you set that timeline, you're going to be expected to meet that timeline. So depending upon how many applications come in, how quickly you can review them and get them back out, timelines can be a little bit tricky.
Yep. Okay. Steve, I'll go back to you.
Yeah, and just an additional note about this to what Steve J was saying. We really don't even have a process yet for who's going to look at the eligibility, whether it's going to be an administrative process or whether it's something that the full committee is going to have to vote on. That's still to be determined for that stage, because this isn't the application. This is really merely if it qualifies under the state act.
Right.
So
But
So
until,
there is some uncertainty here, but I just felt like 6 weeks was much too long. That was the only point that I wanted to make.
yep, no, I agree. Joe?
Well, two things. In line with what was just said about it being an administrative role, does our group have to, let me look at this way. If you put in an application for a shed in Framingham, the building commissioner makes the determination as to whether it goes forward or whether he can approve it without it going before the zoning board. Is this something that could be an administrative position or an administrative decision so that we don't have to worry about the board meeting? Because if we have a 2-week time period and for some reason there isn't a meeting, we're not going to be able to make the decision if it's based on the whole
Right.
committee. But if it could be decided by an administrative person, whether it applies or not, just doesn't seem like that big a deal to make this decision
Right.
as to whether it's eligible or not.
I think it originally when this was formed, and I believe, and I'm almost positive, it was going to have to go to the committee because we didn't have an administrative person. Okay, so then it would have to wait. It would come into our committee, which means it's got to be posted. And if it came in the day after our meeting or the day of our meeting, we couldn't post it for 2 weeks, that type of thing. But I personally believe that it could probably be administratively done. And if there was a question, then they could come before the entire committee.
I don't think this eligibility needs to be that in-depth a thing. It's either going to be eligible or not. And if that administrative person says it's not, they can always appeal to the committee for a decision. But this shouldn't be, I don't think it should be drawn out. I think it should get submitted to an administrative person. They make the decision. Do you send it to the committee or does it go back to the applicant for as not qualifying?
Sure. Steve?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking that this is probably something we're all going to need to decide on before the application process opens. So I'd recommend that when we're setting up our working groups later on in the agenda, there be a sort of an administrative procedure group that makes a recommendation to the committee for the next meeting.
Yep. Okay. Okay.
Just about how the paper is going to get handled, basically, and who is going to have to approve or who needs to approve. But I think that I assume we're going to want to get this application out there sooner than 2 weeks from now, correct?
Correct. We're supposed to have it ready for Friday, but right.
So I would suggest we change the 30 days to 2 weeks or 10 business days, 15 business days, whatever, but something reasonably shorter so people can have the expectation that they're not waiting for over a month.
Right. I agree. What's the thought of the committee? What's the timeline?
Before we move on to that, Tom,
Sure.
just like to ask Yvonne, who, if we're talking about having it be the administrative function and she's going to be administrating, what her comfort zone is with putting something like the eligibility on her, and get your input on the timelines, Yvonne.
I am comfortable making the ruling, and I agree that it should be able to be appealed if someone doesn't like what I've decided, appealed to your board. I'm a little uneasy with the 2 weeks. I think it can be done, but there's a lot of other stuff also going on. It's a busy office. But I do think 10 business days, 2 weeks, I think it's feasible.
So would you feel more comfortable with 15 days? Or 15 business days, that's 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying it's going to take 15 days every time something comes
Sure.
in, of course, but to have that buffer zone, if it becomes a legal document, to have a buffer zone is appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Steve Weissman.
I'm not comfortable having Yvonne do this work, not that she isn't capable of doing it, but it takes a function that should be within the control of the committee and moves it outside of the committee. And I think that's a problem under the regs. So I think this is something that probably a board member or a couple of board members can work on. Because we certainly have a pretty good in-depth understanding of what qualifies as an eligible project at this point. And I don't think we should necessarily put that in Yvonne. But can we talk about that as part of the procedural thing?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's the working group, let's talk about it at that time.
So
All right?
a motion, we.
No offense, Yvonne, at all.
None taken.
I make a motion, we set a time of 15 business days for now and decide whether that works in the future.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Steve,
Second
second.
by Steve. Okay, it's a roll call vote. Steve Weissman,
Yes.
Joe Norton,
Yes,
Steve Joyce,
Yes,
Fred Wallace. You're muted, Fred.
Yes,
Dave
Yes.
and Tom, yes. Okay, we'll change that to 15 business days. Okay. All right, let's move on. Steve, you have some more comments?
You have to keep scrolling.
Yeah.
So the only comment I have here was the comment that Joe and I made 2 weeks ago, which is we're asking for a lot of meeting information on the eligibility form that really has nothing to do with eligibility at all. And we're going to be asking the same questions on the full application.
Understood.
So that's I think a decision that maybe the group made already.
I think because we said we were going with this form that I think, yeah, I think that's the case. Joe, you had your hand up?
just if you go back 2 pages, there were check boxes at the bottom, right there. Should there really be 3 check boxes because open space and recreation are one bucket? So why are we differentiating on this form between open space and recreation if it comes out of the same pool of money?
Yeah,
In other
you're
places,
right.
we say open space and recreation, and then here we have it as separate items. You know, for the same thing, you could have affordable housing separate from community housing. I don't think it should be. I think there should be 3 buckets equivalent to the 3 buckets of money.
Okay, no, that sounds reasonable.
And is affordable community housing the name of the other bucket elsewhere in the document?
It's community housing is the,
So
What's the name?
I think we remove affordable if it's not the same as what's elsewhere in the document.
so in other words, what you're saying, match the buckets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do that everywhere.
I would say that you leave affordable in, and if you take community out, then, the requirement is affordable housing.
Whatever the requirement is, or whatever the proper word is what this should be. And it should be the same throughout all the documents, so we don't have confusion.
I think the regulations talk about community housing.
I think so. I think you're right. That's what our plan says and everything else. So. But we'll match the buckets. Okay. All right, moving on. Okay. Just stop me when you come to something you're uncomfortable with. So,
Well, there's a bit of redundancy in this part of the form. It's either it's eligible or it's not eligible, but it can't be both. So I think project confirmed as eligible could be yes or no. You don't need another line that it's confirmed as not eligible. That seems redundant, though you could have reasons why the project is not eligible. I understand that.
okay. No, I don't have a problem deleting that item.
So there's a yes, no in there as well.
Right. So the yes, no, if it's no, then it's not eligible and reasons why.
Right. You could put in parentheses, if no, and then reason project not eligible.
Right. Okay. Okay. Anything else? There is a comment from the public, Karen Margolis. Karen, do you want to say something?
Yeah, if you could just go back to the previous page where you have your priority areas. The language in this application form was never updated to coincide with the language that you put into your plan. It's approved by your committee. So there's some minor differences. So I would suggest that you, review your plan and make this consistent with your plan.
I agree with you. I don't want conflicts in either document.
They're very minor changes, but there are a few. So, they should reflect what is in your plan, unless you're going to modify your plan.
Right, which I don't think, and that was the whole purpose, is to make these consistent.
Right.
Does the people agree with that?
Yeah.
Joe?
And that becomes a problem elsewhere if you have 3 documents with historical priority areas. As time goes on, those become divergent lists. Whereas if you refer to a master document instead of recreating or creating a separate list, each document you create, eventually you end up with a very muddled statement versus having one document that can be addressed, changed, modified by groups in the future, and then everything relates to that.
Joe, are you suggesting we just refer people back to the plan?
Yes, or somebody has to really pay attention. Every change you make in A has to be changed in B, C, D, E, and F. You know, it gets very complicated. So that's why I like referring to a document that can be modified without having to modify everything in the world.
Can I just real quickly to that? It's Karen.
Yes, go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, Joe, I think you're entirely right, because there's also another set of priority areas in the application itself. They don't all necessarily jive because they may have been edited at different times. So it really makes sense to refer back to the priorities of the plan, so that when you have plans that are revised in the future, then you don't have to re-edit
Everything.
form.
I agree, because we guaranteed you're going to miss something.
Yeah, but I think it's important to refer people to the plan, because I think that way they know to look for the priorities. But unfortunately in the plan, I don't think it has your general priorities. It just has your 4 priority areas. So you may also want to make sure that the general priorities, which I think are listed,
Right here.
yeah, they're
There's a
listed,
criteria.
that
not
that
priorities.
probably should get into your plan.
That's similar. But you're correct, yes.
Yeah, so your general criteria never got into your plan. It should. And then that way you have, everything together. And right now in your plan, your criteria areas are listed separately under each category. And maybe it might be helpful to have it. I know Steve talked about having sort of the summary at the beginning. Maybe you do have a summary page at the beginning that includes both your general criteria as well as your 4 specific area right in the very front, so that people don't have to try to find it under your 4 categories. Anyway, thank you for giving me an opportunity to provide input.
So if I may, Tom,
Lost the audio. Hold on. One second, please. I can't hear anyone. Hold on.
you hear me?
I can hear something now.
Tom, there's nothing being said, so you wouldn't hear us anyway.
Oh, I can hear.
Hi, Tom.
I can hear everybody. I had my headphones in. I lost the connection, so the Bluetooth. So now I can barely hear you. So, hold on, please. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I went to wired headphones, so I apologize. All right, sorry about that.
So Tom,
Yes,
I
Steve.
wanted to suggest that you might want to consider going back to that document that Joe and I had presented 2 weeks ago to see if there's anything in there that you can salvage as a summary that you could add to the form to do what Karen had just suggested.
All right, I'll look at it.
Your call.
Yeah, I know. I'll look at it, but and again, we'll probably have to approve it next meeting, which is on the 25th, which is also before the deadline for the applications to be available is August 1st. So, all right, I will look at that. It does make sense. So. All right, Karen, you have a comment?
Yeah, just from what Steve said, my suggestion was to have the guidelines in the early part of the plan itself. I wasn't referring back to the application itself, but I have no opinion on that one way or the other. I just wanted to clarify that my suggestion had to do with having an early section, right after you have sort of the, like if you move up the page just a tiny bit, where you have the allowable projects, the guidelines. So I think in the plan itself, right after you talk about the guidelines and the allowable projects, then you go straight into your criteria on your plan. So anyway, that's a suggestion. And I have no thoughts one way or the other in terms of your application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else got comments?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, so I'll send this out probably early next week. So we can review it. So, and then we'll bring it back for final vote on at our next meeting. Okay. So, all right, next item, which is the formation of the working groups. Hold on. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay. A couple of things. This is based on what we had from our last meeting, that we needed to do some community outreach. And I know that, and I asked the members to think about what their interest might be. So I know Fred expressed some interest in doing the community outreach. Is there another person that would like to do some community outreach? And what we do in the working group is that we work as a small group and to come up with a plan to come back before the entire committee with some ideas. So that's the whole purpose of the working group. So is there anyone else that would like to work with Fred? Of course, everybody wants to work with Fred.
Of course, of course.
Should we have some, given that 5 of us represent other committees, which also already have constituencies, should we talk about the degree to which we use those other meetings to do outreach? I don't think we've really talked about what we mean by community outreach in this instance. I don't know what Fred volunteered for.
I visualize it being reaching out to other entities within the community that we think should be informed and would have an interest in CPA.
Yes, Dave.
So I agree with Steve that basically we should work within our own groups. I mean, for instance, on Park and Rec, I should go back to them. I might have mentioned at the last meeting, we had a group that was talking about community gardens. Obviously, I'll go back, I'll find those people, I'll reach out to them and I think there's going to be a lot of hand holding to get applications filled out.
Mhm.
So I think, small committees, maybe even one-on-one type of things where we might meet with somebody, bring the application, talk about what they need to do, review it, then bring it to bring it forward. I agree that we shouldn't spend a lot of time pre-qualifying, but it's going to take a fair amount to get people to fill these things out completely enough to bring them forward.
Mhm.
And I think without any hand holding, I don't know how many we're going to get and how quickly we're going to get them.
Well, then I guess I'm okay with that. But there are other groups beyond the 5 boards
Right.
that could use some outreach too. So I guess I'll volunteer to work with Fred, and we'll get something together to yes, Joe.
Could you explain again what this community outreach panel or
Working group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's under the ordinance. We're supposed to reach out to the entire community in one form or another. They don't really just say, they said you're supposed to go out into every neighborhood and advocate for the CPA.
Okay, so it's different so if you apply in some communities to build a building or whatever, the community kind of sits down with you and says, okay, this is what you need to do to get through the process. That handholding that you had just mentioned, I think, and this group might need to provide that handholding. So whether it's called a customer service role or whatever, it's basically something that's friendly to the community and the applicants that helps guide them through the process of filling out the applications. But that's not what this community outreach board is.
No, I think this one is to, reach out, say, look at, this is what the community preservation is. Do you have, we'd like to hear from you. Do you have any projects, and maybe help them a little bit on getting through the process or whatever, trying to help them to know what the process is to possibly get a project into us.
So it's a public relations.
Essentially, yeah.
I think that's a good descriptor for public relations.
And Tom, do you also envision it including publicity?
Yeah, I think that's probably that be included. So, I mean, I do like the idea of you going back to your particular boards. That would help us tremendously, but there are a lot of other areas that we should reach out to, and I'll work with Fred.
Tom, it's Steve Joyce.
Yes.
I'm happy to jump on a call with you and Fred. Not necessarily agree at the moment to get on to the working group.
Yep.
As it is, I joined one committee that gave me one meeting a month, and I get put on this that gave me 2 more meetings a month. That's one of those things, but I'm happy to have some conversations about ways we could do some outreach. I got a few ideas that I'd kick around with.
Okay. All right.
If I could make a proposal, I think also as part of this, it would be worth making a presentation to City Council at their next meeting and asking them to reach out to community-based organizations in their districts.
If that was one of my first thoughts, for ways of getting out there, is to look to them, to their community group.
They should have a sense of where the opportunities are and who might be interested.
Yep. Okay. Yep, I got that. The next meeting's next week, so. Okay. All right, the next thing is evaluation matrix. All right, what are we gonna do when we get an application in? How are we gonna evaluate the projects? So I know this will take some time. We have the time to do it. But I think we have to start looking at it now.
So I think we should fold that into this administrative procedures process that we were talking about earlier. So that working group could maybe be ongoing, but initially focusing on eligibility, but then focusing on the whole evaluation process, including the matrix.
Yeah,
Just so we don't have too many of these little working groups.
I would agree.
I just, as we're talking about this in the administrative part, I would like to go back to the conversation of Yvonne, doing that first cut of whether some application is eligible or not. And one of the reasons of having her do the first cut is if we are going to say that there's an appeal to that, this board is where you're going to appeal. And if you're making the cut and then, sitting on the appeal at the same time through a vote, I think that there's a little bit of a conflict there. We're having somebody that is truly administrative, looking at it, you meet the criteria, you filled out the whole form, you didn't. And that could circle back to some of what people talked about of the outreach and helping people, fill out the forms or be able to put a request together. And I gotta say, if somebody can't put a request together or get help to put that request together, pulling off a successful project is probably going to be daunting. But just a couple of thoughts on that.
Mhm.
So what's the sense of the committee? Anybody have any comments on that?
I'd still like to come back with a recommendation for the next meeting since we aren't going to have any applications in.
Yep.
If anyone else wants to work on that with me, I'm happy to work on that.
Okay, so anybody else? Come on, that's one of the problems that we got in before, is that not everybody was involved. So I really,
Sign me up with Steve on this.
okay. Thank you. I appreciate that, Joe.
I think two of us are enough
Okay,
for that.
okay. And then the review panels, like I say, I don't need to know what it is first, but that the review panels is once we get a project in, we've got to review the eligibility and everything else. And I'd really like this, like I say, there's 3 buckets, there's 9 of us. These review panels, I would like to see 3 of us on each one. You don't have to explain, just we don't have to do it right away. But I think it could be as simple as, all open space projects, person A, B, C does it for 3 months or does it for the first round and maybe go on to a second area for the next round. I don't know. Just thinking out loud. But Steve, you have a
Yeah,
comment?
well, I'd like to be part of historic preservation, but it does seem like as part of the sort of matrix analysis, we have content criteria and then we have general criteria. And we're going to have to figure out how to deal with, let's say you have a preferred historic preservation project, but that has to compete with an open space project in some fashion, depending upon what money's available. So this could be pretty complicated, that screening process, but I'm going to volunteer now to work on historic preservation with Fred.
Okay.
Because everyone wants to work with Fred.
Both of the Freds. That's why we put them on the list twice.
There you go.
Okay. Well, obviously, we don't need to know right now, but if there's an area that you'd like to take at the first crack, that would be great. Yes, Joe.
Well, I had a suggestion that, for instance, the Historic Preservation Panel be, in this case, Fred, because of his role in the Historic Commission, and then plus 2 members. And Community Housing maybe would be Steve Joyce plus 2, or something along that line.
Mhm.
Yep.
So that you have the member from the relevant board on those panels.
Yes. Dave, you had your hand up.
2 thoughts. Tom, you know everybody. Make it, get 3 people in each committee, and we can move it back and forth. I mean, the easy positions are pretty obvious. I mean, we're talking open space and park and rec, that's got to be me. Historic, those are easy. And then put 2 other people with them. Make the panels. Put 3 people together on the panels, and we can argue it out afterwards. Let's stop asking. Let's just get some people together and do some of this stuff. Secondly, if requests are going to come in through the admin, that they be passed down to, somebody in the committee that can basically start to review it and work with a person or work with a group. I don't think you want to assume people, because they can't fill out the application, don't qualify. You don't want people thinking that you're belittling their request.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. All right. So, whether the people want me to make the suggestion and then we can talk about it?
Yep.
Okay. That's fine.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. The next one is respond to CPC emails. As we're getting emails, which are not very often. Right now, all the emails that we've got are all relative to the public forum. But as we get more, we're going to have to respond. And instead of, as you can see, as it comes in, I send them right out again. But there should be someone to respond. Like it came in and I suggested that Steve respond to one. I can do the same thing. I can suggest that Fred respond to this particular email. If that's, I'm happy to do that too. But at least I've got it out to the entire committee. And if someone says, hey, well, like Judy said on the one from, I forget which organization, she said, I'll take care of that. I'll do that one. So I can work it both ways. What's the thoughts of the committee? We're just talking here, so.
So, Tom, I'm happy to help with that, but I do think the responses need to come out of an official website rather than our personal emails. So
Right.
you need to figure out how to get us set up to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think we can work on that. Now that we've got we're working with the administration now. I'll see if I can do that.
And I'm happy to help with those responses.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay. And the other 2, those were leftovers. We lost 2 members. We lost 1 member on the public relations, which was Doug, and the admin staffing. I don't know who that was. But anyways, I just put this up. Let's start thinking about it. We'll work on the community outreach. We'll start we've got the admin and evaluation criteria, the admin procedures, and the admin will work on that. start thinking, I'll make the appointments if that's the will of the board, the commission, the committee, that I'll make the appointments to the 3 review panels initially. Yes, Joe?
Isn't the public relations merged with community outreach?
Yeah, it actually is. So, yeah, so I can take that one off. The admin staffing, I'm still working with the people inside town hall, city hall. So, all right, let's move on. Next item is discussion of the enabling ordinance. And for that, I'm going to turn over the screen to Sarkey.
Hi there.
Hold on.
To make me a host, Tom?
Yep, I'm making you a co-host.
Thank you.
You should have it.
So as we discussed at our last meeting, the original ordinance was not signed by the mayor. And was signed by the council. And my proposal is, and I'd like to present this to the council at their next meeting, I think is July 21st, is to amend the original ordinance so as to include that there shall be an appointment by the mayor. Right now, the 4 at-large representatives are appointed by the city council. And if I scroll down here, hopefully I can scroll down. Let me start from the beginning. Sorry about that. So this is the original ordinance. Sorry, I'm going so fast here. January 19th, 2021. Establishment of a committee, 9 members. Suggested changes here would be 3 members designated by the council for a term of 2 and 3 years respectively. And then the other proposed change would be 1 member appointed by the mayor for initial term of 3 years. The next change is obviously the mayor and the council shall consider designations by multiple member boards.
Can you
And
explain that one?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, well, the mayor didn't have specific appointments, right, to the original ordinance. Right
Mhm.
now, he'll be appointing 1 member to this committee at large. And it read before, the council shall, well, now that the mayor has an appointment, we're adding the mayor. Right?
And on F, you
Yep.
said 2 and 3 years respectively. So what does that mean? You've got 3 members. Are there 2 2-year members and 1 3-year?
Well,
Or
Actually, that's, I was going to comment on that. Sarkey, this was the initial term.
Yep.
What they did was they set it up so that eventually everybody would be on the 1/3 rotation every year.
Okay,
All right. So this actually doesn't apply anymore because the initial appointments were already made. So now they're all 3-year terms.
good point, Tom. Okay, I can make that correction. Thank you. And then again, if you read this paragraph, section 32.2.3, it talks about the demographics. And it's talking about the demographics of the committee. It really should be the demographics and diversity of the city of Framingham. Not the committee, the city of Framingham. That's who we represent. And then, of course, members designated by the mayor and the council. 32.2.4, I think, and I don't know, I need to check this, but I think 21 days to appoint a new member seems long. I was hoping we can shorten that to 7 days. I mean, you may have an application, you may want to get someone on board It just seems like a long time to wait. Again, the other change is the mayor and the council shall make their initial designations. And then scrolling down here to the last section. And I've seen this in other cities that a recommendation would be that within 21 days of the date when the mayor is required to submit a proposal to the city for city budget, that be reviewed by the mayor. And the reason for that is there may be other capital projects that we may be able to piggyback on for funding or grants that may be available or other capital needs. So this was my suggestion that, and it's sort of stated in 32.3.8 and 32.3010. But I just want to make sure that, they're given sufficient time to review the CPA projects.
So there's a procedural difficulty with that one, Sarky, because after February 1st, the list is no longer ours. It belongs to city council.
Okay, but are you going to be, so that means they'll have it earlier than 21 days.
I think actually, I think what should happen, and maybe we have to spell it out. Okay. We as the committee, when we're coming up with our recommendations, work with the mayor before it goes to city council to make sure that everybody's on board as far as the recommendations are concerned.
That's a violation of the state act.
Is it?
Mhm.
Okay.
Not do that.
Yeah, let's not do that. Exactly right.
And then lastly, obviously, the reason why we're proposing this is because the optics of the original ordinance was not signed. And I just think it's a terrible way to start off with the CPA, especially down the road. If there's ever an audit and someone asks, can you send us the original ordinance? And I don't have a mayor's signature on the ordinance. I just think, again, the optics of this, to start off a fresh start, new ordinance. We have time. And it just puts us in a better place when we begin. This is an exciting endeavor that you guys are working on. So it'd be nice to have a nice fresh start. So really, the only change is the mayor would have one appointment to this committee, and then obviously the 21 days, try to lessen that time, as well as the budget, when the budget has to be submitted.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could share one other document with you guys, which I think is really interesting. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is our community. This is the city of Framingham. This is who you guys represent in purple. All the districts in purple are represented. Everything in green is not represented as of today.
Well, that's
Not shocking to me.
no.
Well, the reason why I'm showing you this is because we've heard under public comment that, certain sections in Framingham, and I'm not going to mention, are not being represented. And the mayor wants to make this a priority. He wants everyone to be represented in every district, and he wants that authority. So this is what you see today, and let's make this all purple, right? That's what we want to do.
So to do that, you'd need one member from each district. Is that right?
Well, that would be the goal, Joe. Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
No, I get that. It's just that it may not.
it may not happen. It
It may not be
happen.
possible because,
Right.
just because of the makeup of the different boards. I think it's great to have one from each.
No,
I-
I wanted just to show you guys this. Because I like to do this for the planning board. I like to do this. The mayor wants, obviously he wants transparency.
Yeah.
And he wants everybody to see. My big push is, and I didn't mention this, but we don't have anyone from the Disability Commission. And we have a real comprehensive park project that was reviewed by Mark Dempsey, who put a detailed report together of every park and some of the issues that we have with disability. And maybe they should have a seat at the table. But again, I just wanted to show the board, this is the makeup that you see of the city of Framingham today.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes, Joe.
How about if the size of the committee were increased and have it include one member from each district?
Joe, great idea, Joe. And actually, it was, I think it was Mr. Stefanini who made that suggestion. We go from 9 to 11, and Yvonne and was able. It's illegal. It has to be
Illegal.
It has to
Right.
be a 9-member board.
It
That's
can only
right.
be a
It can
member
be-
board? Okay,
It can be 5. I think it can be 5 to 9.
Correct.
Right, and
Okay.
it needs to be 4 at large and 5 from those specific boards,
That's
Correct.
correct.
Yeah.
which also aren't representative by district.
Yeah. And that's the problem.
And that's the problem.
and can't be because a 5-member board can't have 9 members.
Hmm. Another problem.
It's a square hole.
Again,
Well,
we have time to do this, and I just think it's important that we get off to the right start and have an ordinance that's signed by the council and by the mayor. Just down
Right.
the road, 5-10 years down the road, there's an audit, someone's questioning, where's the ordinance? The ordinance is legal. This is just the optics of how this looks. And so, again, moving forward, we'll have this signed. This will probably be referred to the ordinance committee. So this may take a couple of weeks to get done.
Right. Okay.
Can I
Thank
just ask a question? My understanding was that if an ordinance isn't signed or vetoed, it automatically becomes law, that it actually doesn't have to be signed.
Well, Steve, you're
I
probably
think-
right, but you're a state official and you're doing an audit. Do you really want to go through that process of not?
Well, I'm
having-
just saying, I think that's why it wasn't
Right.
signed.
Right. I think that they overrode the veto, and I think that's what it said. But you're right. I mean,
It is legal. I think that's, not in question. But I think the suggestion is that it's more embracing of the community at large. If there's, more agreement. And
Right.
you didn't have that before, you may have it now.
So, Dave, you have a,
Yeah, I got no problem letting the mayor nominate more people. I mean, it's his city. We all technically work for him. This is, we're trying to get things done and do things properly. Allowing him to have one member be appointed, why not give him more authority?
so, okay. Well, thank you. Okay. Anything else? Thank you. Thank you, Sarki. Is there, by the way, is there anything in the ordinance that the committee might want to change? If you read it and you have a comment or whatever, maybe just let Sarki know on his own, and we can talk about that or at the next meeting, because I don't think we're going to have it finalized by then. So, okay. Next item. Again, it's the in-person meeting of the CPC. I have not heard, Sarki, have you heard whether they're going to continue to Zoom the executive order?
Till December 15th.
December 15th.
Yes.
Okay. So if that's the case, then Dave, this is your request, so.
Why not go hybrid? Why not do both? We're going to have subcommittees here, and it's, now we're going to be trying to chase around members all over the place. I mean, if we have a meeting scheduled someplace, the subcommittees might be able to meet 15 minutes before or 15 minutes after to try to discuss, individual requests. I don't know. I don't know all you guys. it'd be nice to sit in a room and meet everybody and understand where everybody's coming from. That's my only problem. We started 2 meetings ago in Park and Rec going hybrid both. And I started off as being the only board member showing up, and the last meeting we had 4. So just take that into
I'm not
consideration.
opposed to an in-person meeting. Steve, Joyce, Steve.
I mean, I'm not opposed either. I feel like we need someone in City Hall who can get us access to a room that has hybrid capabilities, because they're few and far between.
Correct. I think the only rooms are the Oblondy room, the executive conference room, and the Blummer room. I think those are the only 3 that you can have a hybrid meeting on.
Well, guys, I'm willing to give up my office. I don't know if you've heard, but we will be moving to the mayor's office. The mayor has moved to the 2nd floor, so I plan on asking IT if I can make that more of a conference room / my office, and allow you guys to be able to use my office for these meetings.
And we would need to have, it would need to be big enough for the public to attend too.
Yes, yep,
I mean,
I understand.
I think the Oblondy, I mean, that's where that's where the planning board meets, right, Joe?
Well, we've been in both the Blondie and, it depends on the month. We've actually been bounced back and forth.
Well, that's
We're in
one of the
Blummer.
things with the meetings.
Historically, we're in Blummer downstairs, and we've, in the last year, been upstairs a couple times.
Yeah, but we can work on that and hopefully improve the technology in the Oblondy room.
Yeah, I think, I know that Katie used to have to wheel the cart in. It's Conservation Commission, where do they meet, Steve?
We're still virtual.
Really? Okay. Okay, well, let's work on that.
Are those, is Blondie and Blummer on Monday nights? Are they tied up with other meetings?
Well, that's what we have to find out is
We could go on the portal and see, but
yeah. I know Katie might be able to, is she in the office tomorrow, do you know?
I think she'll be in the office tomorrow. She wasn't in today, but
Right.
I think she's in tomorrow.
Let me work with her and see what we can do about getting a meeting room for the next 6 months or whatever. And maybe we do 1 Zoom, 1 in person to start off. Something like that. Maybe the first meeting, the 2nd week of the month with in person, or the last one's in person. I don't know. But to start off, is anybody adverse to meeting in person?
no.
I think Judy does not want to meet in person from what she's said in the past.
But then again, if it's a hybrid meeting, she can zoom in.
The question isn't if we're against meeting in person. I think is anybody against meeting in hybrid?
Okay, I'll ask it that way. Is there anyone that's against a hybrid meeting? Okay, hearing none. So let's start working on it. We'll see if we can find a room, and then we'll modify it, maybe starting in August, maybe. All right. Okay, next item is the reports from the chair. Just want to fill you in a little bit on the vacant positions we have. As Sarkey pointed out in the ordinance, it talks about 21 days. Anyways, we have 2 vacant positions. Both the positions are on the city council website as vacancies. The earliest that they can take it up is their next meeting, which I believe is a week from tomorrow, the 19th, I think it is. But they would probably refer it to the appointment subcommittee before it goes back to the full council. But as of today, they've only received one application in the city council office. I don't know who it is, but so it's probably going to be a while. I don't know what the final resolution is going to be, but I'd like to get them filled as soon as we can. Also, I noticed on the ordinance, it says that we shall have an election of officers on a yearly basis, it says. Okay. Our rules and regulations say in July. But it doesn't make sense that we have election of officers unless we have a full committee. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I think we should probably wait a reorganization until we have the full complement, all 9 members. Dave, you have a comment?
Well, we got nobody applying and we have an opening. What about asking the mayor? Skarsky, we're asking the mayor to, appoint somebody, let him appoint somebody.
Yeah,
The city council, I don't know if you remember the history of this, but the city council fought hard for all 4 appointments. And they may feel differently now. There's been a change of administration, so they may be willing to share. But I think the ordinance needs to be changed before the mayor can do an appointment for it to be legal.
Correct.
right.
He could certainly ask somebody to apply. If the only one person's applied and he has, someone in mind, again, looking at the diversity of the city and everything else, it's very hard to change things if people don't apply.
Mhm.
So,
I agree.
And I mean, it may be that they want to go back to the people who were interested a year and a half ago.
But
At that point, they had more applicants than positions.
that's right. They did. So, okay. A couple more things. Our administrative item, if you recall, I think it was on the 13th, June 13th meeting, we approved our budget and sent the budget to the city council. If you recall, there were 3 motions. One was to accept the revenues from 22. One was the projected revenues for 23. And the third was the administration item. Okay. Well, when it went before the city council, they approved item 1 and item 2. The third item, which was an administration item, they did not approve because, as one counselor pointed out, that was an appropriation. The other ones were not an appropriation. We were asking for an appropriation for a potential person. And he said that item should have gone to the financial subcommittee before it went to the full council. So right now, we don't have any money associated with for our administrative position. So I guess I would like to know if I think we should probably go and talk with the financial group, put the financial subcommittee, and ask for that particular item again. And yes, Steve.
I think we ought to get a reading from the city council, COUNSEL on that. Because I'm a little bit confused about whether they could potentially not allow us to have staffing when the state law states that we can set aside up to 5%.
There's a problem with that. I don't know. and Sarkey, you may have to help me out here, that the city solicitor is changing. I don't know if our past city solicitor is still working for us, for the city. I think his contract ended June 30th, I believe, but I'm not sure on that. Do you know, Sarkey?
Yeah, Tom, obviously there's gonna be probably delays before the city of Framingham has their council up and running. The mayor, if there are certain requests that we need our current council to take on, he's under contract to do it. He would perform that function.
So I would
as
need
soon
to
as-
ask, the mayor would have to authorize that.
The mayor has to authorize that, yes.
Okay.
Be good. Can you help with that, Sarkey, so we can get a
course I
reading?
can.
So, yeah, it
Yes.
doesn't get
Yep,
caught
Yeah.
up in the politics of city council.
yes, I will.
I was gonna,
I
actually,
shall.
I was going to say that I would be willing to talk with the CFO.
No, but I can do that.
To
for
work
you,
on
Tom.
that. So that we can get moving on that, because the longer we wait, the longer we don't have any.
Right.
So. And then the last thing that we have, I know some of you subscribe to the coalition emails or newsletter or whatever you want to call it. And it came out that the DOR has a requirement that we submit, it's called the project reporting, that it's the CP3 project reporting, that CPCs are required to file this yearly. And it has to be done after, obviously after the fiscal year, so that they can assess what the needs are. I guess that's what it is, and which will eventually set what the percentages of the state match are. So, and it's pretty, actually, it's a pretty simple form. If you looked on the website, it's all electronic. You know, the name, description of the project, where is the project, you know, how's the expenditures going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty straightforward. It's an administrative item, actually. So I went back to the coalition. I said, what's our requirement? Because we haven't had any projects yet. Do we have to submit? How do we do that? And Chase Mack at the coalition said, he said, I can let DOR know that Framingham hasn't had any projects yet. And we would take care of that requirement, that we would fill that requirement, even though we don't have any projects. So I said, fine, that would be great if he could do that for us. And obviously next year, when we do have projects, then we're going to have to file that with DOR. So that's actually everything that I have from report of the chair. Judy's not here, so she doesn't have anything. Okay, so the next item is our member prerogatives. Does anyone have any prerogatives that you'd like to be discussed next time? Yes, Steve.
Well,
W.
I guess for this time, it would be helpful, given the usual delay in when we get minutes, if you could summarize all the things we've agreed to do for the next meeting.
Sure.
That would be really helpful.
I think I can do that. We've got, and since we don't have minutes to approve, we can just, we can wrap it up there. We're gonna revise the application, make sure it's consistent. We're gonna
That's you.
change the location of the application submitted to the planning department. We're going to change the 15 or the 30 business days to 15 business days. We're going to put the check boxes at the bottom to match the buckets. We were going to somehow make the criteria consistent with the CPP. And delete the not eligible. The line item called non-eligible, but say if it's a yes, no. If it's no, these are the reasons why. That type of thing. Then we would, the next item was the working groups, the community outreach. Fred and myself, and we'll work with Steve Joyce. The community outreach also included a presentation to the city council, asking them to get involved and do some community outreach in their districts. The in-person meetings. We're going to look and see if there's a room available that has hybrid so that we can do hybrid meetings. And possibly one a month, at least, will be in person for now. Then Sarkey was going to talk to the mayor about our financial admin person, about possibly using the city solicitor to whether the council has a say in that, you know, in our administration costs. I think that's everything. Did I forget anything?
I guess the only other one is Joe and I working together on the trying to deal with application admin processes.
Right, I got that. I'm sorry. I got that. Yep, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Dave.
Yeah, you're going to put together the working group matrix.
Okay.
And
The review panel matrix.
review panel matrix. Yep.
Yep. Okay. And one last thing that I guess I would like going back to my report about the election of officers. I guess I'd like to get a motion from the committee, essentially that says that the present administration or the present list of officers stay in place until we get a full committee. And at that time, the first meeting of the full committee, there'll be the first agenda item will be reorganization. Yes, Steve.
So I would like to put a time limit on when we review that again. So rather than have it be that open-ended, given the possibility we might not have 9 people for months and months, that we at least revisit it again in September and see how we're doing.
What's the thought of the committee there?
Well, I'd just say if you've already adopted rules that say you are going to have an election on a certain date, then, you know, you're asking council for advice on something else. I'd ask for advice on that as well. If you say that you're going to have an election, you should have the election when you're saying that you're going to have it. To just kind of kick the can down the road, if you will, until you have a full committee. You know, you may be violating some other things that are just going to generate more complaints from folks who are not, you know, not on board with it out in the public.
All right, I can certainly, we can certainly, I'll ask the mayor if I could talk to the city solicitor on that item too, so.
I actually like Steve's point. We could have an election where we agreed to maintain the existing officers for some time certain. That's another
Yeah.
possibility.
Joe,
I was on a zoning board that didn't have a full membership for 18 months. I think that we should, based on what Steve and Steve just said, I think that we should comply with our rules, which state that we're going to have an election in July, or put a time limit on when that election is. But, it can take a long time to fill positions.
I'm okay with that. We can make the first item of business on the 25th as an election. And I can talk to city solicitor about once we get a full board, do we have to revisit? I guess we would have to change our rule first before we could revisit the election of officers. So I think that would be a two-step process, but I will, so we comply with our rules, I will put the election of officers as the first item of business at our next meeting, which is July 25th.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable discussion point. That's when we talk about it.
Mhm.
Because the existing officers might not want to continue to be officers.
This is true. This is true. So,
Okay.
okay. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. It's a roll call vote. Steve Joyce,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Steve Weissman,
Yes.
Joe Norton,
Yes.
Fred
Yes.
Wallace,
Yes.
and Tom Mahoney, yes. Thank you all. I think it was a good meeting. I think we accomplished a lot. Thank you, and we will see you next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody later.
Bye all.
Bye.
Good night.